The only way to get what you want is to become a human yourself.
Hello, fun people. I'm Isaac Carlson, and on Following Dreams, I'm focused on exploring the stories of people who are following their passions and achieving their dreams. I want to help inspire you to pursue what you love by hearing how others have done it. Today, we're speaking to a man who has spent over 30 years in the animation industry. Throughout that time, he became a cornerstone of Walt Disney Animation as he rose as a supervising animator on characters like Ursula from The Little Mermaid, the adult version of Simba from The Lion King, Maurice from Beauty and the Beast, Pleakley from Lilo and Stitch, Captain Li Shang in Mulan, and many, many more. Classic animated characters were brought to life through his work that will live on for decades to come in millions of people's hearts, and that's why we are here to hear his story. Welcome, Ruben Aquino.
Thank you, Isaac. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to get to have you on this podcast and to be able to hear about what you've been able to accomplish. I got to hear you speak at the D23 Expo this year for the Little Mermaid panel for the 30th anniversary. So it was kind of surreal when I was able to begin the conversation to start having you on here and everything.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that was a fun panel discussion at D23. Really enjoyed it and looking forward to speaking with you today.
Well, thank you very much. The first question I always like to ask my guests is, what are you passionate about? What gets you really excited about everything that you've been able to experience and work on?
Well, my bringing the characters to life, I think, was the thing that I really was passionate about during my career at Disney. I get a real thrill out of seeing the characters on the big screen and watching the movies with a real audience. There's something very satisfying to have a whole bunch of people believe in your character, thinking your character is actually alive, and enjoying the performances. That's what kept me going. It was a lot of work. As you know, animation is a very, 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 very tedious process. A lot of long hours, long weeks, so that just made everything worth it. After a long production. But I didn't really start out wanting to be an animator. When I was a kid in grade school, I actually wanted to. I thought I'd become an architect. My dad, he's from the Philippines. My mom's Japanese, my dad's Filipino. And he always told us, he told me, because I was good at math and I was good at art, that I should become an architect because in the Philippines where he grew up, that was a very highly respected profession. And so he thought that was a natural career path for me. And so I pursued that. In college, that's what I majored in. But life took a little bit of a circuitous route for me. I wound up graduating in 1975. We were in the middle of a recession. I'm sure a lot of folks out there remember the 2008 recession. Well, this was kind of similar. Mm-hmm. Nobody was hiring architects. People were not building buildings. Economy was slowing down. So I couldn't get a job in my chosen profession, architecture. So luckily, I had always loved drawing cartoons when I was a kid. Never thought I'd make a career out of it. But I loved Disney. I loved watching the Disney's Wonderful World of Color on TV. This is back in Okinawa, where we had one English language TV station, the military station on Okinawa. And we watched the Disney program every Sunday night. Except it was called Disney's Wonderful World of Color, but we had a black and white TV, so we actually watched it in black and white. But it was great, and I loved the Disney cartoons. I never saw a feature until I was probably in. Well, actually, I saw a couple of features growing up. One of them was Pinocchio, which turned out to be one of my favorite Disney features. But other than that, most of what I saw of Disney animation was the little clips on that TV show. And of course, I watched Japanese anime as well. And some of the Warner Brothers shorts, we saw that on TV also. But I always liked drawing my own cartoon characters, and I would do little scribbles and doodles of my own, make my own comic books. Not very good, but that's kind of the stuff I like to do as a hobby. And in college, I majored in architecture, but we actually had a very broad curriculum. At the time, I thought it was horrible that I was spending all this money, architecture degree, and it wasn't very specialized. They didn't really teach us much that was practical as far as how to build a house or a building. But they did give us a well-rounded education in terms of art history, design philosophy, and we also had figure drawing classes. So the figure drawing classes actually turned out to be a really good thing because later on it helped me get a portfolio together to apply at Disney. I guess I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So after graduating from college, I couldn't find work, and I went to the University of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Couldn't find work in Philly, so I moved to Honolulu, Hawaii, where my parents were living at the time. We were renting an apartment. My dad was out of work. My mom was working. So I finally got a job there. I couldn't find a job in architecture, but I finally landed a job in a graphics department of a print shop in Honolulu, in a very industrial area of Honolulu called Kaka'ako. And it was a very blue-collar place. It was basically a print shop with a graphics department upstairs to provide camera-ready art for the customers. So I was part of a 3-person graphics department. So I was a low man on the totem pole, and I was doing all the stuff nobody else wanted to do. But, it was a job, and it wasn't very hard for me. I had enough art background that I could do the job. Every now and then they would throw me a bone. I'd get to draw a logo or something. But for the most part, I was doing pay stubs, restaurant menus, updating the prices, brochures, very boring stuff, forms. I got really good at drawing corners on forms, curved corners. Back then everything was done by hand. We didn't have computers back then.
Sure.
This is in the late 70s. So I got really good at, we used a pen called a rapidograph pen. It would give you a nice even line. We used circle templates to make the curved corners on the forms. So that was my specialty, one of the things I did really well. But, after it got boring. I was doing that for 4 years, and I really didn't like it. But then one day, I heard that there was a animation studio from L.A. that had moved over to Honolulu, and they were looking for trainees. It was kind of weird. My boss actually told me about that. He showed me a newspaper article on it, and he knew I wasn't happy at the graphics department at the print shop. And he wasn't the owner. He was just my boss, but very nice guy. And so he told me about this job opening. So I applied, and it turned out they liked my portfolio of drawings that I had. Didn't have very much, but it was just enough. And they also had all the applicants take a little test. It was they asked us to create a character, a cartoon character, and make it jump. So it seemed like a real simple thing. I had never done any animation at all, but I had done, well, I guess with the exception of a little flip book I did in high school, it was just stick figures, But so I created this humanoid frog creature and made him jump, and they liked it. So this is the first real animation, other than that flip book that I did in high school, that I had ever done. And it turned out so I got the job. Turned out the owners of the small studios called Farmhouse Gnomes, they were ex-Disney people. So I worked mostly with Kimmy Calvert. Fred Calvert was the owner and pretty much ran the studio. Kimmy was his wife was the person who did most of the animation. So I worked with her mostly. And being a small studio, I pretty much learned a lot of everything. I helped with her with in-betweens, rough animation. I also did cleanup. I did ink and paint. I did pencil tests on the video recorder. So I learned a little bit of everything, which was a great education for me. because I didn't go to animation school. Like a lot of my peers at Disney. I would say a good majority of the animators that I worked with at Disney later on knew that they wanted to be animators for a long time, and actually a lot of them went to Cal Arts, which is the premier animation school in Los Angeles for animation, California Institute of the Arts. And back then there weren't that many art schools with animation programs. Now it seems like all the top art schools offer animation programs. But at the time that wasn't the case. But so that small job at our Farmhouse Films turned out to be my foot in the door in the animation industry. So about a year later, the studio shut down in Honolulu, and they relocated back to Los Angeles. And I kind of followed or went along with them. And the following year, I got a job at Hanna-Barbera.
Oh, okay.
And worked on the Smurfs original TV Smurf show.
Oh,
series.
sure.
Yeah, you remember that show. And also, there's a show featuring the. You remember Fonzie and the Happy Days Gang on the TV live action show? Well, they did an animated version of that. Yeah. Featuring a dog named Mr. Cool, and so he was the dog of a girl from the future who went to that town where the Happy Days Gang lived. And she's from the future, and she anyway. So I worked on that as well. I was doing mostly model sheets, character designs, and on the Smurfs I was doing layouts. So I wasn't doing animation at Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah, but you were applying what you had learned from the previous experience.
Exactly. Yeah. So I learned a little bit of everything. I wasn't an expert on any one thing, but I knew just enough to get a job at H&B. Unfortunately, I got laid off after one season there. I worked really, really hard to hoping that I would be one of the few that they kept all year long. But it was feast or famine back then. It was mostly Saturday morning shows they were working on. So it was 6 months of a lot of work, busy work, and then a big layoff, and then so it's feast or famine. So I was laid off in October 31st of 1981, I guess, yeah. And so I heard I was taking a class at the union, the cartoonist union in LA, and it was a kind of basics of animation class by Art Babbitt, the legendary Disney animator. And it was only like a 6-week course or something like that.
Okay.
But I learned so much from Art Babbitt. Art was not just a great animator, but an excellent teacher. And at about that same time, the book by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston, The Illusion of Life, came out. And I bought that book, of course, and read it cover to cover. And that was life-changing for me, too. That and the class by Art Babbitt. And I also took figure drawing classes to supplement my portfolio. And the following 3 months later, I applied at Disney. During that Art Babbitt class, one of my classmates was from Disney. She was in cleanup, and she said that Disney was hiring people. They were looking for cleanup artists. At the time, I didn't really want to do cleanup, but at the time, I was thinking I'd like to pursue character animation. But I knew it was a foot in the door, so I applied anyway. And I was luckily I had a portfolio of more figure drawings, and also a little bit of animation I'd done on my own. So I applied, and I got into that program at Disney. So although it was a cleanup internship, it it was fine. I got a foot in the door and was able to get into Disney that way. So that was in 1982.
Okay. So when you got laid off, was that a period of time where you were just supposed to wait for 6 months and then hope to get rehired? So you were taking all these classes?
Yeah, they never gave people a definite a promise that they would be rehired.
Yeah.
But it was, you would hope that a lot of people lived their lives that way. They expected it was feast or famine, so they would just wait around for 6 months or do something else for a few months or find another job and then hope to get rehired, when the season picked up again. So that was kind of how it was for a while in the TV animation.
Yeah. So, but you wanted to find something to refine your skills and then eventually get something more permanent.
Yeah, I mean, Disney was the place to be, for anybody who was in animation at the time. And to an extent, it still is, although now there are a lot more options as far as really good animation studios. But back then, Disney was the big place. There was a smaller studio called Don Bluth Studios, who was started. It was actually founded by a bunch of ex-Disney animators.
Sure.
Young up-and-coming animators who wanted to strike out on their own because at the time, even though Disney was the most well-known feature animation studio, it was past its heyday. The 9 old men who did most of the animation during the golden age of animation before Disney passed away in the 60s, they were all retiring. And by the time I got there in 82, only Eric Larson was left. And everybody else had retired. So I was lucky enough to work with Eric. He actually mentored a lot of the young animators during Great Mouse Detective. It was originally called Basil of Baker Street, but the studio powers that be had cold feet about that title, so they insisted that we change the title to something more generic. I think the reason was there was a live action movie called Young Sherlock Holmes. It tanked in the box office. So all the bean counters got all nervous about our movie. It was supposed to be similarly themed, except it was Sherlock Holmes with mice.
It's always weird to hear about that executive interference when they're getting worried about something and you see it later down the road, like Michael Eisner getting uncertain about making the Little Mermaid because they had the live action Splash going on. And
the weird thing is Splash actually did well, relatively speaking. So it's as they say, hindsight is 20/20. So a lot of decisions in the movie in business. It's sort of it's very risky. You don't really know. As they say, it's a crapshoot. You're kind of taking a gamble. Otherwise, everybody would be doing all right, and everybody would be doing really well. But it's really risky business. Anyway, so at the time. When I came to the studio in 1982, we were working on a film called Black Cauldron, and I was just very happy to be working on anything. After the cleanup internship, I actually, what happened was that summer of 1982, after I finished the cleanup internship and got hired on to Disney full-time, there was a union strike. The cartoonists went out on strike over overseas production, which is mainly affecting the TV studios, but Disney, being part of the union, the Disney animators went out on the picket line as well. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's bad luck. As soon as I get into Disney, suddenly they have to go on strike. But it turned out it was a good opportunity for me to do a pencil test, a rough animation pencil test. So we were out on strike for about 2 months. And so every week, like on a Friday, I would go out and join the other artists in the picket line. But the rest of the week, I would be in my apartment working on that pencil test. And I didn't have much in the way of equipment. I had a Super 8 camera, one of those little editors, sound editors that you could play Super 8 film on. So, and I didn't have much money, so I when I was doing my pencil test, I was able to shoot it once and get it processed and look at it on my editor. But I couldn't do that too many times, so I just did it once, and I made notes to myself. I picked a character from Black Cauldron. It was an early design of Fluter Flam, who's the I don't know if you remember the movie, but there's a minstrel character named Fluter Flam. He's kind of funny, and he has a little lute, I guess. Is that what you call those? That little musical instrument with strings that you carry around.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, so I did a pencil test with him, and he's jumping over some rocks on a little creek, and frog scares him when it jumps up from one of the rocks, and he slips and falls into the water and drops his lute, and it falls into the water. The lute disappears. He's looking all over for it, and then finally he finds it, and he's so happy that it's not broken. But then boing, 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 all the springs break. And then the frog jumps on his head. He's bald, or that version of the design, he was bald. And the frog jumps on his head like it's landing on a rock or something. But anyway, it was a fun little bit that I did. So after the strike ended, I was able to redo some of the animation. And at the studio, they had a better video testing system. It was a 1/4-inch reel-to-reel. I guess it was called a Lion Lamb. It's a reel-to-reel. It's sort of like those old-fashioned audio recorders, but it was for video. So anyway, I was able to tweak my animation based on the Super 8 film and fix the animation and then submitted it. It was like a 30-second bit of animation. And the review board took a look at it, and they liked it, and so they promoted me to animating assistant. So that's how I got into the animation end of things. So.
And so were you doing that just so that you could show that you were able to animate and that you were trying to prove yourself?
Yeah, because when I did the cleanup internship, it was the focus was on cleaning up. And so I did get a chance to work with people like Glenn Keane and a lot of other animators working. The first production I actually worked on was Mickey's Christmas Carol. So Glenn was working on them, a bunch of the other animators. So I did their in-betweens for them, but they're cleanup in-betweens. But I really wanted to do rough character animation. So yeah, during this strike, I saw that. I thought, okay, so my opportunity to do a pencil test. That's kind of how you got promoted. Either you went to Cal Arts and did a lot of animation tests at school and got hired, or there was a character animation internship right before the cleanup internship that I went to, and so that's how a lot of the Cal Arts kids got into the animation. So I kind of lucked out not having that background from college. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into the doing character animation. And so they put me on Black Cauldron, which was the feature they were working on. It was a film that, although I was very happy to work on it, a lot of the artists weren't really enjoying working on it. It was considered a dark film. Kind of the crew was kind of inexperienced, and some of the top young animators at Disney at the time had left with the Don Bluth folks to start up their own studio. So there are still a lot of really talented animators and artists left at Disney, but we were all kind of young and just starting, and we're just learning. So, but by the end of Black Cauldron, which was not that great a commercial success or artistic success, I did get promoted to animator by the end of that, so I guess I was kind of happy about that. Now, the next picture after that was called Basil of Baker Street, directed by John Musker and Ron Clements, and they were both former animators. And that was like a ray of sunshine in a very dark period of Disney animation. So that one, everybody really had good feelings about. It was a musical. It had a great story, great villain, Glen Keane, animated Ratigan in that one. And everybody just really enjoyed working on that one. So I guess that was kind of the beginning of the next golden age. Everybody said it was the Little Mermaid, and that was definitely, that was definitely very important. A return to the animated fairy tale, musical. But it started, I think, as they say, Disney animation started with the mouse, Mickey Mouse, and I like to think of the second golden age starting with Basil at Baker Street, another mouse. So yeah, that was great. That was about the time that the new administration at Disney came in with Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg. They were both, I guess, ex-Paramount executives. And they had worked, I guess, I'm not sure both of them worked at ABC. Eisner definitely did. But anyway, so they brought, Michael Eisner was actually, and Jeffrey too, were focusing on live action. They wanted to turn the studio around, but they were mostly focused on live action. And they actually wanted to move, originally there were rumors that they were going to get rid of animation altogether. This was like in 1984-ish. And Roy Disney Jr., Roy O. Disney's son, and Walt's nephew, actually came to our rescue. He insisted that animation was the heart of Disney, and there's no way they could just get rid of it and outsource it, which is kind of what the rumor was that they were going to do. So the compromise was that they would move us off the lot, the animation department, and so all these live action folks moved into our offices in the old animation building, like Bette Midler and.
And was that before or after The Great Mouse Detective?
Well, that was simultaneous to it. I actually moved to the Glendale Flower Street studio off lot during Great Mouse. Okay. So that was kind of simultaneous, yeah. So that was 1985-ish, early 1985-ish when I moved off the lot. And in Flower Street, we were working on Great Mouse Detective. So Great Mouse actually came out in 86, I guess. Cauldron came out in 85. So they were still wrapping up Cauldron when we moved to Flower Street. But it turned out, they said we would only be off the lot for like 3 years or so, and then they would move us back or find a place for us to move back to on the main lot. Turned out to be 10 years. 10 years before they built a new hat building. So,
were you and other animators upset with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we were. But you know what? It motivated us. It made us want to prove ourselves. And we were just feeling our wings, so to speak. We were kind of learning, and it was an exciting time for us. And it was a breath of fresh air, actually moving away from the main lot was kind of a blessing in disguise, I guess, because the studio didn't seem to be micromanaging us that much at the beginning. Even Jeffrey was he was in charge of Walt Disney Pictures, so he was in charge of the live action films as well as animation. So he didn't seem like super focused on animation at that very beginning until things started really taking off. And then everybody took notice, especially after Mermaid.
Yeah.
Then they went, oh, there's something here. We gotta take care of this and keep doing more to make sure they keep doing more of these films. So yeah, I especially in the beginning, in the 80s, mid 80s, we were kind of on our own, and that was a good thing. We were, everything was looking up. They were leaving us alone for the most part. So Yeah, we did we did Oliver and Company, which was, I guess, considered a commercial success. A lot of the animators didn't think it was our best film, but still, it was a musical. It had some fun songs in it. And then Mermaid actually was, I guess, what put us back on the map as far as bringing back the animated fairy tale musical. And that got a lot of notice too, just from the animation world in terms of the artistic merits, and it was considered success not just commercially but artistically. And even the Don Bluth Studios, they had been very successful up to then, and then now we were giving them a run for their money. They had done American Tail with Fievel, the little mouse.
Oh yeah.
And that had done really well. That was in the early 80s, I guess. But then, I think they did Land Before Time about the same time Oliver and Company came out, and those did both equally well. But then when Mermaid came out, and I'm forgetting what came out. Maybe it was All Dogs Go to Heaven. But anyway, that's when we kind of surpassed Don Bluth Studios. Suddenly, we were back on the upswing. So that was kind of an important film in that respect too. But yeah, and then we also did after Mermaid was Rescuers Down Under. That one wasn't our best either, but after that was great. Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
So Beauty and the Beast was, I did Maurice on that one, Belstead. That one was important too, because that was the first animated feature that got nominated for Academy Award. But by then, Jeffrey Katzenberg was really excited about animation, and the fact that it was nominated for an Academy Award was such a big deal for him, for the studio. It did not win, but still, that was a big deal. So I think Jeffrey was a little disappointed that it didn't, and we were all a little disappointed, but that it didn't win. But still, that was it was great to get a nod from the Academy. But it was worth a nomination.
Especially in a time before Best Animated Picture was a category that was common.
That's right. That's right. And part of that was because there weren't enough animated films coming out every year to have it, fair contest. Otherwise, it would be just either Disney or maybe Don Bluth Studios winning every year. So, but it's hard to imagine nowadays with so many animated features coming out every year. It's hard to imagine back then when we were lucky to have one or two animated features in a year. So it didn't really. It wasn't until around that time that we were cranking out the features, one every year pretty much for a long time. And then Michael wanted to expand the slate of animated features even more. But around that time, we started to have a second unit for animated features. So up to that point, we were all working on all the same films. But then after Aladdin, I think Aladdin was the first film I did not work on from that period. So they started doing two separate productions simultaneously. So half the crew would work on one picture, half the crew would work on the other. So about the time Aladdin was put in production, actually most of the animators did work on Aladdin, but I got moved off to work on a film called King of the Jungle. It's pre-production. And that eventually became Lion King. And then Pocahontas was the other one about that same time. So half the crew worked on Lion King and half worked on Pocahontas. So that's when it officially became split into two crews.
Did that change your day-to-day life with the massive expansion that was going on?
Well, it was good and bad. It gave a lot of opportunities for young animators, up and coming animators, to become supervisors. Because back in the old days, like in the 60s, when the Nine Old Men were reigning supreme, there were complaints from some of the younger animators that there was just no chance to move up because all the top slots for like supervising animators were taken up by the Nine Old Men. So it was kind of just frustrating for a lot of young animators, and a lot of them left or were laid off. But same thing started happening with our group in the early 90s, but then they split up the crew into two, so that gave more young people opportunities. So in a sense, that was a good thing, I guess. But it kind of started a rivalry between the two groups. So, one, like the Pocahontas film was considered the A project. So all the supposedly top animators worked on that one. Glenn worked on that. And then the King of the Jungle crew or picture was considered the B picture. And so it was expected that Pocahontas would be, great and do really well. And to our surprise, King of the Jungle, which became Lion King, actually surpassed everybody's expectations. And that really took off and became a blockbuster success. And I think that was the highest box office we had for a long time. With Lion King. So I was very lucky to work on that. Originally, when I came on board, I was just doing experimental animation. I did a lot of research animation for lion walk cycles, run cycles, and also wildebeest run cycles, which they used for the computer animation of the wildebeest stampede. So that was one of the first uses of computer animation for characters on our features. So it started, I did a hand-drawn run cycle for the wildebeest, front view and profile view. And then the computer animators took that as a template, and then they tweaked it. They made it better even. But they built the CG model of the wildebeest and used my animation as reference. And then in some of the scenes where you see wildebeest up in the foreground doing something weird, like jumping or something, they actually hand animated that. But they made the computer animation match the hand animation, so it's really hard to tell. But it seemed fairly seamless. So they did a similar thing with Mulan years later.
With
the
big battle
with the Hun charge, in the snow, similar kind of thing. That was about the time to backtracking a little bit. When we did Rescuers Down Under. That's the one with the Bernard and Bianca in Australia. That was the first feature we did with what we called CAPS, the computerized animation system, production system. It's a digital. So up to then, we were producing cells and photographing the cells for the final animated films. But after that, during Rescuers Down Under, everything went digital. There was actually a scene at the end of Little Mermaid, which was a feature we did before Rescuers Down Under. That was actually done in CAPS, done digitally. It was, I think, one of the last scenes of the movie where all the mer people are waving goodbye to Eric and and Ariel. But that was the first digital scene we did at the studio. And then the whole of Rescuers Down Under was done digitally. So the unfortunate result of that was that we didn't have production cells anymore. So all the cells that were done after that for other movies were actually what they call gallery cells. So they weren't actually cells that were done in making the movies. It was done after the fact. So But going digital definitely saved a lot of the expenses.
Yeah, so you got to see the full range of switching to digital and computerized animation.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Yeah. When I started, we still drew on paper and pencil even after caps.
Yeah.
So it was still drawn on paper and pencil on the animation desk. But eventually, of course, everything went to computer animation. And I was kind of around for that too.
So going back a little bit too, what was your transition like from going to animator to supervising animator on Oliver and Company? Because that allowed you to work as the head on a lot of these huge characters.
Yeah. Oddly enough, on Oliver and Company, supervisors were not supervising necessarily just by character, as was the case with later movies. But we were sequence directors, so we were supervising sequences. But for the most part, I did concentrate on Francis the Bulldog. The supervisor pretty much, in addition to animating, I would say most of the animation, or a big percentage of the animation on the character, and doing a lot of experimental animation on the characters, especially on the other films where we were actually in charge of a character. We were also in charge of a team of animators that worked under us. We would also be in charge of the model sheets, the final designs on the characters. That was we often would work with character designers for the productions, so they would maybe take a first stab at all the characters in the movie, but then we would do the final model sheets, and then also work with the cleanup department. We had a cleanup crew as well, so we had to coordinate with them. I worked very closely with the head of cleanup on my characters, and we would do the final cleanup model sheets together. And we would also figure out colors and that sort of thing. So as a character supervising animator, I was very much invested in the characters, much more so than we were with the characters when we switched over to computer animation. Because obviously with computer animation, you don't have to know how to draw the character. So that's a big part of being a supervisor for 2D characters, where you have to do chalk talks, talk about not just who the characters are and what their role in the movie was, but also how to draw, the characters. So, and also you would do draw overs when other animators did their animation. You would draw over some of their drawings to make corrections, or suggestions to improve the drawings. So in that way, that was a little bit different from computer animation. So yeah, I felt very connected. We were very connected to our characters as supervisors. But it's a different skill set too. You have to supervise a bunch of other animators. So it was something I had a difficulty with. It's just my personality is not that, I don't like to be critical of people. I don't like to make waves, so it was hard for me. It was definitely a learning process for me as far as that aspect of the job. If given my druthers, I'd rather just be in a room by myself and doing all the animation myself. But the problem with doing major characters, especially like Simba, adult Simba, I had like 7 animators working with me. So obviously you can't do all of it yourself, right? So somebody has to coordinate and supervise all the other animators. So I have to say I didn't really enjoy that aspect of it, butting heads with other artists. And a lot of artists are very strong-willed, have their own point of view.
Sure.
Kind of part and parcel of being an artist, I guess. So that part was tough for me, but being able to make creative decisions, of course, with the directors, and everything, of course, was collaborative. But still, having a big input on the character designs and the animation, a thrill for me. I really enjoyed that. I felt like I was contributing a lot to creating the characters. Although, as I said, it was very collaborative. So, in other words, for instance, character like Ursula, I actually inherited the character from other animators, like Rob Minkoff actually was originally supposed to animate Ursula, but when he left the project to work on something else, I guess he put in a good word for me. So I was offered the opportunity to supervise Ursula, and of course I jumped at the chance. That was kind of a big plum that fell on my lap. Just out of the blue, I got a call from Brian and John asking if I would like to supervise Ursula. Of course, of course I would. And I have to say that was probably the most fun I've had animating a character throughout my whole Disney career. Ursula was just so much fun. Her voice was great. The character was great. 90% of the design had already been done by the time I inherited the character. So, but I tweaked it a little bit to put my own stamp on it. So that was kind of fun.
What stood out so much about Ursula that made you really fall in love with creating her and bringing her essence to life?
Well, the voice, for sure. Pat Carroll. You know what? I never met Pat Carroll. I was familiar with her. When I was growing up in Okinawa, we actually watched a show called The Danny Thomas Show, the live-action show, and Pat Carroll played one of the main characters in that show, Bunny Helper, the neighbor lady, and she was over the top, very big character, just like Ursula, and she actually had a very stellar career in Broadway after that. But I knew her from TV, and and of course the voice was very inspiring. Such a great performance. And I've spoken to her on the phone a couple of times since, after Little Mermaid came out. And so I feel like I know her, but as a person. But the voice was just amazing. And also I enjoyed working on her tentacles. We did a lot of research on octopuses or octopi for that role, for that character. So I got a big kick out of animating her tentacle. It was almost like animating another character. It was kind of a lot of work, but it paid off. So we didn't have a whole lot of scenes where you could see her walking, but I did do that one scene in the beginning where you first see her for the first time coming out of her shell, and then she lands and it does her little walk. That took a lot of time, but I was so happy with how it turned out. And that half octopus, half human idea was not my idea. It came out of other, people's ideas. But as I said, it was very collaborative. But it was such a great concept. I was involved early on in some early character designs for Ursula, Ariel, Sebastian, a bunch of other characters in the movie. At the time, I wasn't even assigned to any particular character, but a bunch of us took a shot at different characters, coming up with ideas for the designs. And at the time, all we knew was that Ursula was going to be half human and half fish or some other underwater creature. And we didn't even have a voice at the time. Pat Carroll had not been cast at the time. And I think originally they were thinking of some kind of Joan Collins type character. Joan Collins was a big star back in the 80s. And she was on a show called Dynasty, I think. And she was thin and glamorous. And so that's originally how they were thinking of Ursula. thin and glamorous. Of course, that changed a little bit. She was still glamorous in her own mind,
Very much so.
but not thin. So, but still, it was such a fun character to animate. Over the top, very big, very broad, and actually being a plus size character was fun to animate. A lot of overlapping, squash and stretch, that sort of thing.
How did it feel once Ursula became like an iconic Disney villain, and when that happened to other characters that you created that have been like merchandised so much and have been able to become characters in the Disney parks or in the shows? What has that experience been like for you?
It was a great experience, surreal in a way, and in some ways I feel like I lost control of the character, which is fun. You'll see like a pin, and the drawings are done by other people. They're not exactly like how you drew her, which is fine. It's so that you have to kind of let go. The character has a life of its own, but it was definitely a great experience for me in terms of feeling proud of my part in creating the character. As I said, it was a collaborative effort, so especially with Ursula, where I kind of inherited the character, so I cannot really take full credit for her. But it was really satisfying to made me, of course, feel really good and happy when the character became so popular. I think she was voted one of the three favorite villains of all time for Disney characters. Cruella de Vil and Maleficent, I think, were the other two. But that, I think, was based on an in-studio poll. So, but still, so that was very satisfying, very gratifying. For an artist, for an animator, there's nothing that can beat that feeling of helping create a character that's not just popular but beloved. I don't think there's another character I can think of that's been as beloved that I've worked on. Simba, of course, was up there too. Yeah,
absolutely.
But I loved working on Simba. I loved the challenges of animating believable four-legged animal with a personality. But Ursula definitely was a lot of fun. So there's no comparison. But still, I was very grateful for the chance to animate adult Simba as well. It's great because every picture is different. So it never gets boring. It's all like getting paid to go to school and learn. And so it's very, the audience wants something new with every picture. They're always looking for something different. So we're trying to satisfy that, and also for ourselves. It's fun to animate something different, something new. And it's an endless process of self-education. And Disney's great about bringing in lecturers, and during Lion King, they actually brought in animals, real lions and other critters for us to study. And they brought in lecturers like Stuart Sumida, who's a biologist, anatomist, and dinosaur expert. But he would also do lectures for us for comparing quadrupeds and carnivores and herbivores, like lions versus wildebeest, and how they move similarly or differently, how they're built differently based on their diets. And so it was great. It was very satisfying. It was a great career. I really enjoyed working on all those characters for so many years. I feel very lucky. I think I came in at a good time. Timing was just perfect for us.
Yeah, you were able to find this career, like it almost seemed out of the blue. Like it was just a stroke of good luck that you were able to find this thing that you were able to become so passionate about and be able to work on for so
Absolutely,
many
yes.
years. Mm-hmm.
And one thing I've learned from all this was that even when things looked very bleak and things looked, downbeat, I still tried to learn and do what I like, which is drawing. And I took classes, not just figure drawing classes, but also storyboarding, all kinds of different classes, film classes. And so when opportunities came, I was able to try to take advantage of them by being prepared. Mm-hmm. So there's that song that Scar sings, "Be prepared." So you never know what life's going to throw at you. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to be able to be a bit flexible, and especially nowadays with new technology, you just never know where things are going to go. So it's always good to, first of all, be versatile, and also to keep learning, keep improving. Although there are a lot of opportunities in animation in the industry as a whole these days, it's also become very competitive. Mm-hmm. So everybody has to be really good at what they do, and hopefully be versatile as well. Mm-hmm. If you want to animate, maybe you can. If you like to animate 2D, maybe you can consider storyboarding. So
sure.
Because there are more opportunities now in storyboarding than in 2D animation. Although there are still opportunities in 2D, but so you kind of just have to be a little bit flexible. But the good news is it's never been there haven't been as many opportunities as there are today. Mm-hmm. The industry is just growing like gangbusters, so that's good. But you just kind of have to be prepared.
Yeah, you've been able to endure a lot. You moved to the Orlando studio. That when that opened up, you trained with CGI and went through even working through Frozen. So you've been working on a lot of things to continue to improve yourself over those years.
Yeah, I tried. I guess I was lucky in that actually having had an architecture background from college days, I was used to thinking three-dimensionally. So when it came to learning Maya, computer animation, it wasn't really that hard. I was used to thinking X, Y, Z, and I was good with math, so some of that helped a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, I love drawing. And computer animation is more like digital puppet animation, which is not a bad thing. And I admire all the CG animation that's being done these days, and all the talented CG animators. But my heart is really with 2D drawing. Mm-hmm. I didn't get the same satisfaction or feeling of ownership of the characters when I was doing computer animation, which wasn't very much. I worked on one computer animated film, Meet the Robinsons, where I was supervising characters. And I didn't feel the same connection with the characters as I would have with supervising a 2D character. Mm-hmm. But still, I actually like the look of computer animation. It's different, It's they're able to get a lot of detail, subtleties, and performances, mm-hmm. textures, that sort of thing that I wish we could have had it with 2D. So I definitely do appreciate really good CG animation. But as an artist, my love was really for hand-drawn mm-hmm. animation.
Which absolutely makes sense, because you're making every line, you're modeling the character every single time instead of just manipulating it, which can make sense why you'd feel that type of disconnect.
Yeah, it's a little bit less it's more specialized with CG animation. You know, you have different people modeling the characters, rendering, texturing them, calling the shots as far as the colors and all that kind of stuff. Whereas with hand-drawn 2D characters, supervisors were much more connected with the decision-making of the creative process of what the characters looked like, and it's a little bit different. It's a lot more fragmented creatively.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say is your proudest moment throughout your long journey of being able to experiment and create all of these characters?
Well, the two characters that I'm proudest of are Ursula and adult Simba.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just I feel very lucky. As you said, the timing was just right.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like, just in general, I'm so glad, thankful that I was able to contribute to that whole period from the mid 80s to the late 90s, which was a really exciting time period to be in animation.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel proud that I was part of that, I guess the second golden age of Disney animation, for sure. Like I said, it was very collaborative. There are a lot of really good people, very, very talented artists involved, and I was just a small part of it. But I feel really happy that I was able to be a part of that in my own way, you know.
Is there anything that you still are hoping to be able to experience or accomplish moving forward?
You know what? I'm kind of retired now, and
Mm-hmm.
After all these years working for Disney and working collaboratively, I kind of would like to do something of my own. But I've kind of been looking around and thinking about it for a few years. You know, I left Disney in 2013, so it's been a while. It's been like 6 or 7 years. But and I've done a little bit of freelance work just to keep busy, and I work around the house, do little projects, but I'm still looking for that one or several things or direction. I'd like to do something of my own. I haven't really figured out what that is yet, so you'll be the first to know. But in the meantime, I'm just kind of recharging my batteries. I would like, and I am kind of very optimistic about the future of animation. What I've seen lately, there's a lot of potential out there. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to see a lot of great things people are doing even with computer animation. And you know, computer animation is here to stay. But they're starting to branch out into different art direction. Which. Like the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I thought that was very exciting because they're trying something different, more of a graphic novel look. And that's just one example. You know, there's a lot of potential there. The technology is just, we're just at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what else people are going to come up with. And, you know, it's all about creative vision, at this point. The tool's there. And the technology will keep improving. The software will keep improving. But I think the exciting thing is what people will use it, to come up with the new technology.
Absolutely.
So it's very exciting. Yeah.
I feel the same way, especially being able to see like Pixar's Spark shorts and the other shorts that have been coming out of Pixar and Disney, where they're experimenting with the technology, especially the things where they're using a more 2D look. That's what's really exciting me. I want to see another Disney princess animated film that has that 2D charm with all of the musical elements again. I think that would just be fantastic to see.
I would love to see that too. And I think it will happen. But yeah, it's very exciting. I feel a little disconnected right now from what's going on, not just with Disney, but with the industry. Because, as I said, I am kind of retired. But I'm also kind of enjoying being on the outside, looking in,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, as an observer and not necessarily a full participant. But that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was so much work. Animation is so much work. So I'm kind of happy to just let other people pick up the baton, and they're doing such great work. So yeah, I'm happy to move on and maybe try to find something else to do. But
Sure.
But yeah, it's been great, and it's very exciting, fun to watch.
Sure, it's time to be able to just enjoy the art form without being in the trenches every single day.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It really is, but it's very satisfying. I can't think of anything else that would have given me more satisfaction than all the films we worked on at Disney, and then the films that people are working on these days too. It's a great career to be in. Creating characters, bringing them to life, coming up with great stories, entertaining millions, billions. It's great for artists, of all kinds. We're able to find careers doing that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And that's amazing that you've been able to have this satisfying career. You've been able to make a massive impact on the studio, and I'm sure many people's lives by the characters that you've been able to create and the stories that you've been able to tell. Finally, Ruben, I want you to tell the listeners what you feel is the number one piece of advice that would help them follow their dreams so that they can be able to look back on their careers and be so happy like you are.
I would say follow your passion. I know it's a kind of a cliche, but don't necessarily just pursue something just because you think it'll be the practical career path for you. Do what you enjoy. Be open-minded. Be versatile. Be aware of what's happening in your industry or the career path that you're interested in. Be open-minded in terms of learning new things. I always tell young animators that with animation, it's a never-ending educational process. So it's great in that you get to learn about everything. Animators are bringing characters to life, but they're also learning about music, storytelling, anatomy, everything, movement, the physics of movement. So I would just say, keep an open mind, keep an open eye, observe, go out there and look at people, expose yourself, be influenced, be inspired. And, if you're good enough, talented enough, you're going to definitely be able to a career doing that. It's a great time to be in the animation business. So just be prepared. Keep doing what you love and improving yourself. At the very least, you'll be doing something that's fun, and hopefully you can even find a career doing it. There's nothing that compares with having a career that's very creatively satisfying and fun. I don't know. That's a long one sentence.
Absolutely.
Piece of advice, but yeah.
I think you've made some great points. It's about finding what you care about and latching onto it and seeing how far it goes, because you can always find something more practical sometime down the line. But I think that if you really care about it, that you should go for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking with you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being able to come on here and sharing what you experienced through all of those years working in animation. As someone who's grown up with all of these movies and experienced all of these characters, it's meant a lot, the work that you've put in and contributed to making all of that come to life.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for being such a big fan.
Absolutely.
And all the people out there who grew up on our stuff, thank you.
Mm-hmm. To all of you who are listening, if you enjoyed this discussion, let me know by rating the podcast and subscribing. Also, it'd mean a lot if you followed me over on Instagram at WatsoVideos and considered supporting this show by supporting me over on Patreon, which will also be linked below. To all of you fun people who are out in the world, thanks for listening and have a magical day.